Okay, we're getting near to the end of the series on OS+R. This video is going to talk about magic and social conflict. I don't know why I wanted to pair those things together, but I still do, so I'm going to. So, deal. So to begin talking about magic, and we will begin this video talking about magic, we need to go back earlier in the book to page 45 to the description of how the mage works. So, rather than have a variety of subclasses, such as, in a sense that we see in the warrior, we have just one page dealing with the mage, and the description starts right off the bat saying a mage could be anyone that uses magic, and you are going to decide the way that your mage uses magic. And they give a list of good witches, shamans, necromancers, sorcerers. You have to figure out their goals, their spells, and how sane they might be. Okay, for armor, this is not something that they will have training in as a result of studying magic, so they gain hindrance for that. Just something to think about. Weapons expertise, you can expect to have experience in one weapon, and that's very reasonable from my perspective. And their attribute expertise lies in intelligence and charisma, their ability to learn and their ability to, put their spells out there. They gain leverage, it says, on all tests to resist the effects of spells and enchanted items. They are a magical specialist. So that's fine. Here's a cool thing. We have something called thaumaturgy. So these are like cantrips. A mage can create any number of small magical effects which do not harm or hinder any living creature. So you can light fires, you can move small objects, make sound, small illusions, that kind of thing, because you're a mage. If you want to actually affect something, that requires a spell. So thaumaturgy is all of that. You will start with 4 spells of what's called the first order, the entry-level order of magic. And the order is going to be added to the target number. And we haven't really talked about the target number, so let's do that. Remember, we're rolling a d20 often, plus 1 additional die called the expertise die, which comes from your occupation or some other factor. So your expertise die is likely a d4 unless there is some situation which has enhanced it 1 step to a d6, or unless you yourself have used some of your advancement potential to increase the size of the expertise die. So we are rolling a d20 plus a d4 in many cases in order to get a 13. So as the average of a d20 is 11-ish, and as the average of a d4 is 2, this is doable. You should be able to expect, without any other negative modifiers, or in the presence of positive modifiers to your advantage because of your planning and the way that you are approaching things, you should expect to succeed when a roll is called for in a situation where it's just necessary to roll. That makes sense. You're not going to be asked to roll unless it's necessary. However, some of the things that are making it necessary are likely to add negative modifiers, and so you should expect, therefore, to fail unless you take steps. So, spellcasting, you have 3 areas to choose from. There's the life weave, the shadow weave, and the fell weave. Of the 3, spells connected to life weaving, or to life weave, is, well, they are harder. Shadow Weave is a little easier, and the Fell Weave is the easiest. The difficulty for these are different. This is one of the exceptions in the rules for the target number being 13. So spells for Life Weave are a target number of 12 plus the order. So first order, second order, third order, that kind of thing. So you're starting with a 13, 14, 15, or higher. Shadow Weave is a target number of 11 plus the order of the spell, and the Fell Weave is only target number of 10 plus the order of the spell. So that's nice. And that fits in very thematically with how we view magic often in fantasy as a corrupting influence against which the mage should guard themselves, lest over time, they be eroded. But another cool thing about magic is casting spells causes damage. Now, if you are successful in casting the spell, this damage is going to be recovered at the end of the scene. Also, if you are successful casting the spell, you'll be able to retain the spell to be able to use it later. If you fail, you suffer damage that doesn't recover at the end of the scene. Or you lose the spell for the rest of the scene. Choice. So I like this quite a bit. There are specific rules in here for what happens on a fumble or a critical. A raw 1 on the d20 is an automatic failure where you suffer an additional d4 hit dice or hit points in damage, the loss of the spell for the day, and you get hindrance to all casting rolls for the rest of the scene. So don't roll a 1. If you roll a natural 20, you can enhance the spell in a variety of ways. So lots of fun there. Big risks using magic should be important. It shouldn't, in this game, it's not a frivolous decision to cast a spell. It sounds like thaumaturgy could, in a sense, be frivolous. This is easy magic. This is magic that you have mastered. It doesn't cause harm, but it does allow a certain amount of minor control over your environment. Tipping someone's glass over comes to mind, right? Or lighting a pipe, or causing smoke to move in interesting ways around the room. Lots of things that allow the mage to seem like a mage, and to maybe, in the right hands, cause some kind of advantage or disadvantage to others. When you actually cast a spell of one of the orders, however, channeling of those energies and engaging with that action is something which is physically demanding, physically draining, and comes with actual risks. If you do it well, despite what's going on around you, fine. everything works out. But as the order of the spell increases, the chance for difficulty increases significantly, and your chance for being unable to attempt spells of that type again, or enduring damage, becomes more and more likely. So it's a juicy choice to play a mage, I think. So what kind of spells are we talking about? The spells go up to the 5th order. We find the book of spells on page 60. First order spells start on page 62. Now, the very first spell listed is a great example of the temptation provided in the system. The very first spell listed is a Fell Weave, so low difficulty, first order spell. So it would be cast on a difficulty of 11. It's called Arcane Strike. And it unleashes energy that automatically strikes a number of targets equal to 1 plus 1 per point of wisdom, dealing a d4 plus your charisma in damage to each target. And these ignore defensive resistance. Their form and design are for the caster to decide. This is the very first spell you see, your ability to do damage. Okay, but it's associated with this fell weave. What exactly does that mean, right? Or what is that going to come to mean? And if we think that this difficulty of 11 is going to be pretty easy to hit, how are we going to feel about it when we miss? I find this quite interesting. On the first page, we've got fell weave, shadow weave, life weave, fell weave, life weave, life weave, life weave, shadow weave. So this is an interesting mix. And the spells are not divided by the type of weave. They're divided by the alphabet and by order. First order spells, second order spells, that sort of thing. So Arcane Strike is a first order spell. Entangle is a first order spell. Mend minor wounds. Obfuscate, which hides magical auras. Protection provides target with a bonus to tests made to resist the actions of the fell. Right. These are example first order spells. Second order spells, we have Speaking with Animals, called Beast Tongues. We've got Bless, which gives leverage. That's nice. We have Invisibility. Guess what that does? We have Lasting Illumination, Levitate. These are all second order spells. Silence, Reveal. Spectral Forces. The maid summons spectral forces that resemble terrors from beyond the pale. These move as if alive and force viewers to make tests of wisdom or succumb to fear and flee to a far range each round. Okay. They can also do damage. Very cool. Second order, but it's a fell weave spell. Very tempting to use. Third order, we have Alacrity, increasing your initiative. Got Blast. Always like that word. Clairsentience, Commune with the Dead. Flight. Remove Curse. Fourth order spells, Barrier, Cauldron of Blood. Unsurprisingly, this is a fell weave spell. The caster calls forth a weeping vein of deadly poison. A weeping vein of deadly poison. Who doesn't want to cast that spell now? That's awesome. Fell Step, Fade Terrain, Floral Growth. Wow. The caster causes all floral growth in the area to increase at an unnatural rate instantaneously. This can block passages and must be destroyed or dispelled. That's neat. Inflict Grievous Wounds. I will allow you to guess if this is Life Weave, Shadow Weave, or Fell Weave. Mend Grievous Wounds. Let's look at a Shadow Weave spell. Polymorph is a Shadow Weave spell. The caster or a designated target is transformed into any creature or object as desired by the caster. The target retains all attributes, hit points, defense, etc. However, they gain one key feature of the new form per the intelligence of the caster. Unwilling targets may make a roll to resist. Now, I think this is an excellent way to handle polymorph so that it doesn't take a lot of time figuring out what the new stats are, and we get whatever benefit it is that we're looking for. I've run into trouble with this kind of spell in freeform Magic systems more than once, bringing the game to a brief halt as we have to establish what exactly this means, as it's often not spelled out in the spell. But this one does it, so I'm happy to see that. So if, for example, you wanted to change into a flying creature, the key attribute there is that it can fly. And so you keep all of your attributes, but now you can fly. And you look like whatever it was that you've been transformed into. So that's pretty handy. I like that quite a bit. Fifth order spells. Animate Corpse. Bountiful Meal. Dismiss the Fell. Dire Beast. Feeble Mind. Let's take a look at Feeble Mind. It's another Shadow Weave of the 5th order. The caster removes 1d10 points of intelligence, wisdom, and/or charisma from the target. Each attribute affected requires a test against the casting roll. So this enables some kind of magical struggle in which you ensnare or numb the senses of the target. Love it. So these are the examples of spells that you might have. Each one includes something like range, how long it will last, and what type of target. The durations are varied. Sometimes they are related to the charisma of the caster. Sometimes there are a number of turns. That kind of stuff. Pretty slick. Targets can be area or one creature. It's all spelled out. And each spell description is like that big. 2 or 3 sentences at the most. They're all in the same format. And their order tells you what to add to the difficulty. So it's pretty simple. That's magic. Except there's more. What? There's more? Yes, there's more. You get, as another part of this magic system, the idea that there are magical components, there are magical foci, there are magical talismans, and there are magical fetishes. So components are one-shot items, things that can be used to make casting easier or to make the effect better, that are consumed by that act. Foci are described as limited use items to perform one of the following tasks, and it can be used multiple times, no more than 3 times, it says, before they too wear out. So again, they make some aspect of casting or some effect of casting easier. Then there are talismans, which are permanent items which perform one of the tasks that the foci do, but permanently. And then finally, fetishes are things which enhance specific spells. Very cool. So this ties directly into the idea of the unusual, looking wizard with their strange, raiment of queer artifacts and bizarre adornments, and maybe some of them are magical, and maybe some of them are just decoration. Who would really know? And so right on. So this gives us a pretty rich magical tradition to draw upon, not only for characterization, but also to slide a little more deeply into the implied setting of OS+R, or use it to create our own. What would a world be like where these sorts of abilities are possible? How frequent, is magic? How common is magic? How survivable is that profession? What happens to someone who dedicates themselves to magic over time? Something to think about. Now, in magic, a very important characteristic, not the sole important characteristic, but a very important characteristic, is charisma. Now, you'll find that intelligence is equally as important, and wisdom plays a pretty significant role as well on the effect side of things. So when I went through reading Social Conflict, I noticed that these same characteristics and others, because that's how the system was designed, that all of the attributes be important, they play a significant role. Charisma, wisdom, intelligence play a broader role than strength does or than dexterity does, although these things will appear. So what am I talking about? Social conflict, I was happy to note, starts out with the idea that the person that you're speaking with or trying to communicate with may not understand you. And if they can't understand you, then we're not going to get into social conflict. We simply don't understand each other. So as long as there's some level of understanding, then we can. And it will begin with a roll on the social conflict table, which you find on page 56. It's not very big. And what it does is it provides an approach required for a particular non-player character to be open to manipulation or social interference, let's say. Now, it doesn't, of course, have to be rolled. The NPC's need doesn't necessarily have to be random. You could find an appropriate one and then follow it through. But if you're deeply in improvisation and the characters are meeting people that you're inventing on the fly, this is very handy. You roll a d12 and see what it is that will be the opening that a socially competent character is going to be able to identify and exploit. And we will move through, much like with chases, 3 stages or a number of stages until we have resolved satisfactorily the role-playing side of the social conflict situation, as well as use the system to bring the character or characterizations out. So for example, let's say we roll our d12 and we get a 1. This is the honest face. This is the approach. The character attempting to do the manipulating is going to have to put on an honest face. They have to be trustworthy in some way. Their entry tactic is to establish that they're not going to lie. The second tactic is that trust between us is necessary. And then the third tactic is to establish or further support that trust. Right? So these are described across the table as a roll of 1 leading to an approach of honest face, leading to tactic 1, I wouldn't lie. Tactic 2, you got to trust me. Tactic 3, I'm an expert. Now, these situations are connected to roles for your character. First one being charisma. This is an opening gambit. Then we move into wisdom. And finally, we move into intelligence, demonstrating your expertise. So this shapes, much like chases are shaped, which we talked about in the last video, this shapes the boundaries of a scene inside which we will improvise and roleplay. We'll establish the nature of the NPC and why they need this particular approach. We'll establish how this is identified by the characters and how they exploit it and how they move through these appropriate tactics to try to get what they want from the person who doesn't necessarily want to give it to them. Fun part, if there is trouble understanding each other, if both people are communicating in a second language, for example, there's hindrance on the roll. And the role is set up so much like chases. There is a lead person, and they will be conducting the roles. They are the face for that scene. However, an additional character can help by supplying their expertise die to the roles. Your wingman, so to speak. So, we can envision a lot of different characters in the party being able to step up in different situations and being able to use social conflict. We don't necessarily need a specific face character, although one might be very handy. But there would be situations where it's in our best interest to have the warrior, or whoever our warrior happens to be, or a jack, or the mage step up and portray or be the face of the party in a particular instance, because of this requirement that they really understand each other. This can go beyond mere language. This can also go into your perspective on life, and I find that this, like many other things in this book, gets you thinking about the campaign you're actually going to play from the character perspective, which is compelling and attractive to me, rather than focusing on doing large information dumps about setting and contriving to get everyone to conform to that and whatever genre you're going for, and then choose the right characters, and then get ready to follow a pre-written or established path. While you can do that, you don't have to. And this game is subtly written toward guiding you into feeling confident about bringing more and more improvisation and relying on the excitement of the moment, your ability to read the table and that sort of thing, to have fun and work toward that heroism, conflict, and the quest for glory. So, until the next time.